cloud security with one of our veteran and expert mentor, Professor Papa Rao. He is one of the very well-known name in the cloud community and one of the favorite mentors of ours. And I was just talking to him saying that what a yeoman service that you are providing in terms of sharing your decades of experience with all of us. And Professor Rao has been a seasoned DevSecOps consultant, corporate trainer, and of course a mentor at Race. He has 25 plus years of experience in multiple cloud, AWS, Azure, GCP, on identity access management, AIOps, MLOps, and multi-cloud migration programs. And he is very well known in terms of not just on the training, but on the implementation part. And he has been guiding multiple organizations actually to do to perform the cloud security journey. So we are so glad and blessed actually to have Professor Rao leading this session. Before we move on to a quick understanding on who we are, let me just introduce you to Reva University. This is a beautiful university located in the north part of Bangalore. And we have a very bustling, one of the cleanest campuses in the country, which is hosting about 16,000 plus students, 2,000 plus faculty and staff, and offers programs, about 100 plus programs between UG, PG, and PhD programs. So if you are in Bangalore, do visit us. If you are outside Bangalore, we would hope that one day you will visit us in person to understand what kind of programs. And it's a very promising university which is doing a lot of innovative teaching, learning process, as well as the research projects that which we run here. The department which hosts this webinar series is called Reva Academy for Corporate Excellence. And I am Dr. Shinu Abi, the Director for Corporate Training Programs. And on behalf of our entire staff here from RACE, we are so glad to bring you another interesting and very, very relevant topic today on this policy as a code automation process. RACE has been in corporate training for the past about 10 years and have been training organizations and working professionals in data science, AI, cybersecurity, cloud, techno-functional leadership for the past 10 years. So we have started this journey quite early. And right now we have built the depth and width of the real consulting and research deep expertise in this area because of the multiple trainings that we have been doing. And RACE has a beautiful ecosystem. I think that is why our programs stand out in the market. One thing is that people like Professor Rao very generously give back to the participants through RACE, where almost 50 plus such very senior industry mentors are mentors. So rather than academic faculty, we are an entity for the industry, by the industry kind of a concept. And we have so far trained 1,000 plus mid-senior executives. And we have a great ecosystem of multiple cloud partners, which includes AWS, Azure. Today, there will be a demo from Professor Rao about these and multiple other various partners that which we are blessed with to work with. And just to give a line of introduction, because I'm sure that Professor Rao is one of the experts in this area, that when I look at it, from a governance perspective, so from a senior management perspective, that we enforce certain rules, certain rules are converted into policies, policies are converted into procedures, procedures into controls. There are various ways that an enterprise is governed. The problem most of the time is that the policy will remain as a document, and it is very difficult to percolate that policy down into the last person of the enterprise and ensure that it has been implemented well. And there must be a governance structure, there must be a dashboard or somewhere that we know that this policy is being implemented in the right spirit. And most of the times when you do an auditing purpose or when you are regulated, say for example you are you want to be you are in a healthcare organization and you have certain compliances like HIPAA or any kind of personal information, all those things have to be controlled. Or if you are an ISO 27000 for an IT governance that you are looking for, or it could be financial transactions like PCI DSS. There are so much of policies and regulations and controls that somebody has to put it together so that we are regulated and we are compliant. Now, this becomes a nightmare for all of us to manage this. And when Professor Rao suggested that this can be completely automated using multiple cloud features today, I think this is the way to go. And I know that from our consulting experience, there are a lot of interest that the companies are showing to bring GRC process into more manageable terms. Otherwise, it was files after files that people used to keep it, and we still don't know who understood what or what is implemented. But here we are looking at automating the whole process as a code and using a DevOps pipeline. If you can look at maybe in a typical ISO 27001, there are 100 plus controls. Similarly, for each such processes. So if we could look at automating this whole process, I think this is going to be a game changer. So this is a very new topic, and we say that we are most of the times RACE offers very pioneering topic, pioneering thinking, and we do hope that some of you pick up this webinar and understand the whole process, and also check the demo Professor Rao is going to show you and have a quick glance of it, and then maybe you can later discuss about how we can learn this further. Right. So with that, I'm hoping that you will find great value in today's session. It's very, very useful. Whether you are a new student who is getting onto a GRC area, or you are a senior manager, want to automate some of these policies and controls, or apply for understanding how cloud can help you to automate this process. Whoever you are, I hope you will find great value. And Professor Rao is a pleasure to listen to, and we wish that you have enough things to take back after this webinar. So this is going to be a 1 hour session with a demo. And if you have queries, please chat in the chat option, and we will take the questions in the end. And I think there were some feedback we were getting that we should improve the Q&A session, etc. For that, we have a suggestion that why don't you come to the campus, or you can connect us online, and then we can have much more detailed interactions. But today we'll spend about 10 minutes on Q&A, and then we will close. And if anyone is interested to know more, please do visit us, and then we can have a great dialogue. Okay, so over to you, Professor Rao, and looking forward to a great session. We will come back during the Q&A. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, ma'am. Yeah. So
change the screen. You can share the screen.
Yeah. So good evening, everyone. Yeah. So Dr. Shinu ma'am has given you the it means about me. She gave the introduction actually. So let us quickly jump into the topic. So we call it as policy as code. That's good. But policy as code, it looks very simple. Policy as code looks very simple. But what we need to have is multi-cloud, because one of the challenge in terms of, let us take, you take any aspect of multi-cloud. When you take any aspect of multi-cloud, example, it can be security, it can be governance, or it can be like say, kind of FinOps, anything you take, right? So each cloud has its own terminology, and each cloud has its own way of implementing the governance. Each cloud has its own way of implementing the security and all. So this is where we need to have, see, let us take an example. If I'm a DevOps engineer, or if I'm like say a security, like say, or ops guy who is very familiar with like working with IAC, infrastructure as code and all, we always prefer, right? I don't want anything specific to particular cloud because today more than 90% of the organizations today, they are working on a concept, means their strategy is basically the multi-cloud strategy. So when the organization has the multi-cloud strategy, we need to have a unified way of maintaining everything. So that is where the interesting part of means we are saying that policy as code is good, but the policy as code across multiple across the multi-cloud environment actually. So this is what we are interested here. So what kind of tools and which tools right we can make use of? Understand? So these things we will try to understand here. Yeah, first let me explain you what do you mean by policy, how exactly these policies will work, and what are all the cloud native means. Let us take Azure native. The means how we implement the Azure in an Azure its own native way of like say configuring the policies. In AWS native way of configuring the policies. In the GCP the native way of configuring the policies. And which tool is a better tool like say through which we can have a policy as code implementation across the clouds. A single means as an IAC guy or as an ops guy, as a security guy, as I say, see what I would like to means like what the kind of tools that I want to use is let me learn only one tool. Let me learn only one way of declaring the policies and the definitions, and so that right, if I go to the Azure, one way of like say writing the implementation, and if I go to the AWS in another way of writing the implement, we don't want these things. We need to have a unified way of doing the things. That is where right policy as code automation for the multi-cloud security. So let us get into this one now. Yeah. So just for the uh, quicker like means like say for the better performance, I'm stopping my video here. Okay. Look at this. Hope all of you are able to see my screen. Yep. Fine. So the policy as code, a paradigm shift in the IT governance actually means today everything what we are trying to do is everything as code, maybe infrastructure as code, security as code, compliance as code, policy as code, everything as code actually. Understand? So right, so that what is an advantage of doing this one is we can easily bring it as a part of our DevSecOps, like say the processes and the practices. That is the main advantage of this one, using the policy as code. So understanding the compliance in the multi-cloud environments. Supporting separate business best practices and business practices and regulatory standards over the multiple cloud platforms is a part of complying in multi-cloud environment. So according to the business type and the area, that standards may include HIPAA standards, GDPR standards, PCI DSS. Like this, there are so many standards actually for the governance purpose, depending upon what is the kind of vertical your organization means your organization belongs to which vertical of like say if it is a healthcare or if it is like say the retail or if it is like say fintech. Based on that you will be having different types of governance policies and all. So managing the compliance seems more complicated due to the different services and configurations each cloud service provider offers, such as Amazon Web Services, Azure, and GCP. This is the main challenge. So in a multi-cloud environment, see, my organization is using a multi-cloud environment, at least two clouds. Example, like say AWS and GCP, or like say AWS and Azure, or Azure and GCP. So each product has its own, means each cloud has its own way of implementing the policies, implementing the governance policies here. Yeah, I'll give you even like say some more details on that down the line. So look at this one. So what do you mean by defining the policy as code? What do you mean by policy as code here? So to understand what policy as code means, you must first understand the policy. What do you mean by a policy? In this context, a policy is any type of rule or a condition or an instruction that governs your IT operation or the process. Yes, It can be anything. It can be related to the security. It can be related to the infrastructure management. It can be related to any kind of ops, actually. It can be security ops or it can be infrastructure ops, anything it can be. And a policy could be a rule that defines which conditions must be met in order for a code to pass a security control and be deployed. So it can be even the part of your SDLC also. So I can have the policy as a part of my SDLC also. I can write the policies for my SDLC process also. And for example, it could be a set of procedures that are executed automatically in response to a security event, or the concept of the pack, that is the policy as code, is a direct manifestation of broader everything as code movement. So today we are, like say, coding means, see, I don't say they use a word called as write everything as code. That means we are not really sitting and writing the code here. See, this is basically called as a declarative. So the declarative approach, right? So, but yeah, instead of doing it manually or instead of doing it by using some scripting and all, yes, we do it as the declarations in the form of MLs or in the form of JSON and all. So the policy as code represents a contemporary and evolving approach to the IT management that involves expressing the organizational policies and regulations as the executable code. But I don't say it is executable code, right? You write the declarations, at the backend, it generates the required code. Try to understand. This is a very interesting point. See, most of the products, if you take today, the DevOps product or DevSecOps products, if you take, we don't sit and write procedural way. Means in the generation one of the DevOps, the DevOps generation one, it was called as procedural. That means to do any kind of automation, we used to sit and write the Python script or the Ruby or something. We use it. But today, we have a lot of tools to do that job for us. Only thing is, you just like see, write your declarations in the form of the ML or the declarations in the form of the JSON. At the backend, it automatically generates the required code and it will be executed. So even though we do the declarations at the backend, the actual code will be executed. But as it is, we are not going to sit and write any kind of scripting, or you need not be an expert in terms of like say programming languages to do this everything as code movement. Understand? Right. What are all the example use cases of the policy as code? Yes, you can see here I was talking about, look at this one. A policy could be a rule that defines which conditions must be met. Okay. See, in this context, a policy is any type of rule or a condition or an instruction that governs your IT operations or the process. So see, in this context, if you look at the use cases of the policy here, it can be for security compliance, or it can be for, say, the cost control. The policies can be, or industry standards compliance also, as we say like HIPAA, understand PCI DSS, or cost control. So PAC helps enforce the cost control measures such as automatically shutting down the unused instances or restricting the provisioning of the expensive cloud resources to the specific users and all. That is also a policy. Or if you look at the security compliance, in context of the security compliance, policy as code can enforce encryption settings for sensitive data, ensuring that the cloud storage and the database comply with the security standards like PCI DSS or the HIPAA and all. Or it can be for cost control, or it can be like say to impose the industry standards compliance. That is, organizations in a regulated industries can leverage PAC to automate the compliance with standards like CIS benchmarks, ensuring that their infrastructure is always audit ready. So these kind of use means that's what we are saying. So when I say policy or when we say governance, this governance can be related to anything. This governance can be related to anything, and the policy can be anything here. Understand? And I'll show you some of the policies and all. Now, you may ask how it is different from infrastructure as code. How it is different from infrastructure as code. Example, if you look at the IAC, as we have something like the Terraform, we have something like, say, Pulumi, we have something like Ansible, Chef, Puppet, Salt. Like these are all so many products are there to work, like say, to implement your IAC, infrastructure as code. So what exactly is difference between these two? So if you look at the policy as code, the concept of policy as code may sound similar to the infrastructure as code or IAC, which uses the code-based files to automate infrastructure setup and provisioning, and has been common practice for the IT operation teams for years. And whereas IAC is the beneficial of the IT operations teams who need to provision infrastructure, and policy as code can improve the security operations and the compliance management, data management, and far beyond. So IAC is basically, okay, to put it simple here, guys, to put it here, yeah, there is a very thin line between these two things. If you look at here, yes, we say IAC. Generally, in IAC, we'll talk about two things. One is, like, say, modeling and provisioning the infra, modeling and provisioning the infra. And the next one is the config management, configuration management. So typically, if you see modeling and provisioning, so we'll try to model. Let us take for a so-and-so application, you required, let us take, say, 2 VMs, and you required one database, and you required one load balancer like this. And this definition, right, similar kind of applications, if I want to deploy again and again, the definition of this hardware, we are going to convert it as a template. And this is what we call it as modeling. And whenever I want, I can use this model to provision that hardware. So typically, if you look at modeling and provisioning, it is related to the hardware provisioning, infra provisioning. And this is where you use Terraform and you use Pulumi and all this stuff. Now, what is config management here? Yes, now the VMs are like, say, provisioned. Now I just want to do the OS patching for this, and I need to do some software installations, or I need to apply some hot fixes, or I want to deploy my application on this. So this is called as change and configuration management. So this is basically the tools we use is like Ansible, Chef, and Puppet. All these things are the tools that we will be using. Like that, there are so many tools. Now, when I say policy as code, we don't do anything related to the infra provisioning or the change and config management on our environment actually. So it is nothing but the policy as code here. The policy as code here is basically talks about, you can see here, it basically talks about, see, it is to improve the security operations or to implement the compliance or to do the data management. And see, this is basically what we call it as the policy as code. That means we don't talk anything in terms of provisioning or applying the hot fixes and all. No, it is the governance part. We are only coding the governance part. That is what we call it as policy as code. That is the reason it is completely different from the normal IAC, and we cannot use those tools at all. Yeah, it is to an extent, right? You may ask, right, why can't we use those tools? Because it is also it means, let us take an example in Azure, everything is a resource. In AWS, everything is a resource. And in Azure, there is something called as an Azure policy. It is also a resource. Why can't I use, like, say, the resource provisioning? Means there you are only doing provisioning of the resource actually. Provisioning of the resource. Understand? So, but here, when I say a policy as code, I need to have a unified way of defining the policies across the clouds, defining the policies. That means we are trying to bring the single scripting and a single schema to do this job for us. Yeah, in a demo, you can understand that. So, look at this one. Yeah. Fine. What is the challenges for a multi-cloud compliance? Yes, we do the policy as code. We will be using some tools and all. And why should we use like say external or the tools which are outside of your cloud actually. Because when I say there is a means any cloud, if you take, they'll have their own way of implementing the GRC, their own way of implementing the compliance and all. So when they are providing the tools, why should we use some, like say, the third party tools and all? Yes. So first try to understand why we don't use that. The cloud provided tools here is very simple. So what are the challenges of multi-cloud compliance here? One, diverse security standards. That means it might be difficult to safeguard and even compliance posture while various cloud providers have different security processes and compliance frameworks. The way they implemented their security frameworks, the way they implemented their compliance frameworks will vary from cloud to the cloud. And complex configuration management. So to assure the compliance, each cloud service has configuration settings that must be appropriately managed. And dynamic environments. The multi-cloud environments are typically dynamic, involving rapid changes, additions or modifications of the resources. And due to this, it can take a lot of work to keep track of compliance status in the real time. And visibility and monitoring. So it can be challenging to achieve a complete view and ongoing monitoring across multiple cloud platforms, particularly since each provider has its interfaces and monitoring tools. This is a challenge. Yes, I'm working in a multi-cloud environment. See, I have two public clouds and one private cloud. Understand? I have, like, say, three different admin consoles. Understand? And let us take, there is one application which is deployed across multiple clouds. Understand? Now, I want to provide the governance for this application. So, but what part of your application is running on Azure? What part of your application is running on AWS? What part of your application is running on your on-prem? And what are all the different tools? That means there is no unified way of monitoring the whole application as a single unit. So correlating, right? So whatever the, like say, the compliance settings that I have in Azure for my application, and the part of application is running on AWS, what are all the compliance settings for that? And the processes actually. So to monitor, and there is nothing called as a unified way of doing it. That is the main challenge actually in a multi-cloud environment. Always, guys, always. When you say multi-cloud environment, everything is different. So even if you take, like, say, at the end of the month, you are getting a bill. And if you even look at the bill, the invoice, what the cloud is sending to you, right? To understand AWS, I have to follow some terminology. To understand Azure, I have to follow some terminology. So everywhere it is completely different. Everywhere. Understand? Yes. So look at this one, the multi-cloud security challenges and the patch solution for that. Example, fragmented visibility and control. And each cloud provider has unique tools, logs, and interfaces, making a unified security view very difficult. Now, how the pack will address that? So, centralized policy definition. That means policies defined in a single or a common language and stored in a central repository for unified management. Unified management. This is interesting. Policies defined in a common language. In a common language. That means the kind of scripting that I'm going to use is the same scripting for implementing the policies across the clouds. So it's a common language. Understand? Number two, inconsistent policies and the controls. Security configurations vary widely between providers, leading to the gaps and the conflicting the standards. And the pack provides you standardized configurations because the policies enforce consistent settings across all cloud environments and reducing the inconsistencies. Reducing. Try to understand, guys. Here it is very interesting. See, we are saying that common language and a centralized repository, but it is not like I will be using the same schema for both actually. That means Azure schema is different, my AWS schema is different. But I'm talking here is only the language part. And the policy, the way I write the policy, this means the structure of my policy will be the same. But again, it's very important. It's very important. The resources on which you are going to impose these policies, the resources are different. That's why the schema will vary, but your language will be the same. The schema will vary, but the language will be the same. Now, misconfigurations and the human errors. Lack of standardization increases the likelihood of errors like overly permissive access and misconfigured storages. And in a pack, automated enforcement and the drift correction, and policies automatically validate the configurations and correct the deviations and minimizing the human errors because it's a centralized one. And expanded attack surface, more endpoints, APIs, and resources in multi-cloud increase the potential entry points for the attackers. That means, yes, see, if you are implementing in a multi-cloud environment, yes, obviously attack surface is large. But whereas in PAC, shift left security integrates the security checks early in the CI/CD pipeline to detect and fix the vulnerabilities before the deployment. This is interesting. And one of the advantage of coding the policy, that is nothing but policy as code. Coding the policy is basically you can integrate these policies as a part of your CI/CD pipelines, as a part of your CI/CD pipelines. And everywhere means you do something as a part of your CI/CD pipeline and you can have a check, right? If this as a part of CI/CD pipeline, you are trying to deploy something onto the cloud and immediately I need to have the policy should be enforced on that. So as a part of my pipeline itself, I can do this enforcement actually. That is an advantage along with your application. Along with your application, you can even send the policies required for that. That is the major advantage of the policy as code here, right? So this is something like this, guys. This is something like this. Now you can have something, see here. So you have a repository here. See, I'll have my repo here. I'll have my repo. That is nothing but my code repo. Assume this is kind of a Git repo or something. Okay. So now I have my application. For this application, I have my source code. I have my source code. Understand? And for this application to be deployed, I will be having my IAC scripts. That means the complete infra. The complete infra creation is available on this. Understand? So I will be having the IAC script. Then I will be means as a part of this infra, I'll be having both like say provisioning scripts, and I'll be having even like say config management scripts. All the things are there. My application code and required infra and the configurations, and then I'll have my pack also. Once the infra is created, and before deploying the application, let me apply my pack. Or before deploying the application, I'll apply the pack on the infra. And once the application is deployed, I'll apply the pack on the application. So I will be having my application specific pack as well as infra specific pack here. And finally, I'll have my pipeline also here. I have my pipeline. That means the whole thing which is required for your application, everything I can put it as in a single repo. In one click, I can do the complete end-to-end here. I can do the complete end-to-end. So this is basically the advantage. That means you can look at this one. Here what I'm saying is, once the infra is deployed, what is the pack you require? And after the application is deployed, what is the pack you required? Or once the application source code is built, what is the kind of like say pack you required in the QA environment? So everything you can configure it. Everything you can configure it here. So that is an advantage of like say you means using the concept called as a policy as code here. Using the concept called as policy as code. Understand? Right. So compliance complexities. Varying regulations across the multiple jurisdictions require detailed audit trails and centralized reporting, often unavailable out of the box, because it's a multi-cloud environment. The reports will be different on different cloud environments. And As a part of the pack, I can say continuous monitoring and auditability, that is, provides the real-time compliance status and auditable record, simplifying the regulatory adherence. And skills gap and the resource constraints, this is one of the most important thing. Shortage of the personnel with the expertise in vendor-specific security tools or limited budget for comprehensive security. That means, see, in a multi-cloud environment, I have to maintain. So let us take, I have a policy administrator or something. This guy cannot, like, see, he might be very good in Azure, but he might be not in good in the AWS. But if I'm using this policy as code, he should be worried about, like, see, what kind of code I have to write against Azure and against AWS and what schemas are there. That's good enough. That's good enough. So I don't require to maintain, like, say, what we call it as for each cloud, a different expert who is the means the person who is coding the pack actually. And enhanced collaboration and testable policies. That is common language and automated testing reduces reliance on the specialized manual effort and the foster the shared responsibility. And then data integration and the consistency. Inconsistency and latency issues can compromise the data integrity when synchronizing across the platforms. But whereas in PAC, unified IAM centralize the identity management across the clouds, ensuring the consistent access controls and reducing the data exposure and the risks. Data exposure in the means, see, try to understand, guys, because many people are having a wrong assumption saying that I can run the same pack. Okay, generally, let us take different products. Example, some products will use YAML, some products will use JSON and all. Now, let us say I'm writing a single YAML file. Can I run the same YAML file across Azure as well as across AWS? Now, that is not what do you mean by centralized. Understand? So we cannot run the same YAML against all the cloud providers. See, what I'm saying is the language is common. When I say a language, how you define the variables and what are all the data types and how you do, like, say, work with the control structures. Understand? These things are common. The scripting is common, but not the schema. That point you have to remember. The schema is different, but you need to learn only, you need to have expertise in only one scripting. That is the main part of this pack actually. Yes, integration difficulties. Incompatible services or the APIs between the cloud platforms can create the security gaps. And working with these APIs, guys, cloud APIs is one of the biggest headache. That means each risk means if you look at AWS APIs are entirely different from the way you invoke those APIs or the way you consume those APIs is entirely different from the way you work with the Azure APIs and the way you work with the GCP APIs. That is one challenge. So standardized configurations and automated deployment ensures consistent application of rules despite underlying platforms are different. So this is basically what are all the challenges in the multi-cloud environment and how the pack can address those issues. Understand? Right. Fine. So policy as code, compliance as code, security as code, anything. You can say policy as code. So the policy as code concept utilizes the code to indicate and automate the compliance policy, thus utilizing the inspections for the compliance into the software development lifecycle. And whatever the cloud-based platform is used, the business might ensure the compliance is consistently implemented and monitored by utilizing the PAC or the CAC. That means unified way of, right? Compliance is consistently implemented, unified way of implementing. You define the policies. Means what is your policy, right? Don't worry about, right, how to implement this in Azure or how to implement in AWS. You create your policy definition properly, and put it in the form of the pack actually. Right. So you need not worry. Means everything you define at one place and then push it to the different cloud environments. Yeah, that's okay. Policy as code, what benefits it offers actually? Consistency and repeatability, scalability, automation and the drift correction, CI/CD integration. Very simple, guys. You take everything as code or anything as code. These are all the main advantages. Or if I talk about policy as code is kind of an initiative towards the DevOps actually. Again, so the same slide, I can say that what are all the benefits of the DevOps? Consistency, repeatability, and scalability, and automation and the drift correction, right? So it is suitable. If I say IAC, these are all the same things. DevOps, these are all the same things actually. Understand? Yes. So implementing the policy or the compliance as code. Define the compliance policies first. Initially, create the compliance standards specific to your business and the field. This involves internal policies, best practices, and all. First, you try to document what are all the policies you require. Then, codify the policy. That is, set the requirements for the compliance into an automated code. Use the policy as code tools such as AWS Config or Open Policy Agent or HashiCorp Sentinel to generate the policies that can be automatically enforced. Yes, we'll talk about this. And merge with the CI/CD pipeline. That means you can put it as a part of the CI/CD pipeline. That is, merge your CI/CD pipelines with the compliance code. This guarantees that the compliance checks occur automatically throughout the development and the deployment phases. And automate the remediation, that's fine. So to address non-compliance issues, implement the automated remediation workflows. Tools such as Google Cloud Functions, Azure Functions, and AWS Lambda can prompt the remediation activities depending upon in which cloud. In which cloud. Even this remediation can also be unified, guys. The remediation can also be unified. Actually, we have the tools for that. And constant monitoring. Use the tracking and reporting systems to monitor your compliance level. Perform such as the Google Cloud Operations Suite or Azure Monitor or AWS CloudWatch and all. I understand. And frequent audits and the updates. Evaluate your compliance policies regularly and implement the adjustments to reflect the changes, the organization and the regulation. So the regulatory requirements actually. Now, here we are saying that define the compliance policy and codify the policy. That is the most important thing. Define the compliance policy and codify it. And I'm not going to use the cloud native tools like AWS config and all, or Azure policy, AWS config and all. No, we use the tools like OPA, Open Policy Agent actually. Understand? So it has its own, like say DSL, domain specific language called as Rego. And in the same way, you have Terraform Sentinel, or you have, like, say, Cloud Custodian. Like this, there are so many tools available. Even Pulumi. In the Pulumi, we have something called as a guardrail. I'll show you that one. Right. Look at this one. What are all the benefits of policy as code? Consistency, the same thing which I showed you, and automation, scalability, and real-time monitoring. These are all the same. So the same slide which I was talking about actually. Now, adding the policies to the CI/CD pipeline, this is one of the interesting things. Integration policy as code into the CI/CD pipelines is a game changer for multi-cloud governance. And by embedding the policy checks directly into the development lifecycle, organizations can ensure that governance happens automatically, preventing non-compliant resources from ever reaching the production. This is what I was telling you. This is what, like before in deploying the application and after creating the infrastructure, understand which components of the application need to go to the production. So these and all you can even control in the beginning itself. And that is what we call it as a shift to left, we call it as. Understand? Instead of doing everything in the production, we do it well before that as a part of our CI/CD pipeline. And here is how it works. The pre-deployment validation. This is what I was talking about. Pre-deployment validations. That means infrastructure code is scanned before the deployment. If the changes don't meet the policy standards, clear error messages are triggered, making it easier to fix the issues early. And runtime monitoring, configuration drifts are detected in the real time, triggering the alerts or the automatic remediation. And the process typically involves adding the policy checks at key stages of the pipeline, that is code commits. And I can have a policy check at the code commit, whether whatever the code the user is writing should go to the main repository or not. Or build process, validate the infrastructure templates. And the deployment stage, perform the final compliance checks. And finally, post-deployment monitoring. And ensures that ongoing adherence is, that is what I told you. Infra deployment, and then the post-infra deployment. And application deployment, and the post-application deployment. Everywhere we can, like, say, integrate the policy as code here. Understand? Yes. What are the best practices? What are the best practices of for policy and the compliance as code? Yes, collaborative with the stakeholders and modularize the compliance code. This is interesting, guys. Collaborate with the stakeholders and all is fine. Modularize the compliance code. That is, keep compliance code modular and reusable. And this makes it easier to manage. Okay, depending upon what tool you are using. Understand, every tool gives you this componentization and the modularization. And use the version control. Store the compliance code in the version control system. That means whatever the policy that you are writing, or you are writing the code policy as code file, right, should be the part of your version control system. Test the compliance policies regularly and stay informed, and keep up to date with the latest regulatory changes and updates in the cloud services. And provider offerings to ensure your compliance policies remain relevant. That's okay. Yes. What are all the tools? So the tools for policy and the compliance as code, as I told you, HashiCorp Sentinel, which is very popular. A policy as code framework that integrates with the Terraform and the other HashiCorp products to it means, see, this product is called as a Sentinel, understand? But the code which we use here is the Terraform code. And in the same way, OPA, that is open, which is a very, very popular, guys, open policy agent, which is basically what you call it as, it comes under like a GNU public license, that OPA. It's a community edition, basically. That's why I have seen this OPA usage of this OPA means, if I want to enforce the policies in the Kubernetes environment and all, most of the time we go for the OPA. And an open source policy engine to enforce compliance regulations that may be integrated into several cloud native environments. And the cloud custodian, and it operates on a modular architecture, enabling the users to define the resource management policies in simple ML configuration, in the same way Confessed. And is a tool that allows you to write the test segment, the structured configuration data such as YAML, JSON, HCL, and all. And by using the Rego policies. This is called as Rego, the same language used by the OPA. So the Confessed uses the same Rego policies itself. Then we have a CrossGuard, which is a very popular one, guys. It is from the organization, means the competitor for the Terraform is called as Pulumi. And in the Terraform, we have Sentinel, HashiCorp Sentinel. But here we have something called as a CrossGuard to implement the policy as code. And in the same way, these are all the cloud native, AWS config, Azure policy, and Google Cloud Organization policies. These are all the native, but we generally don't use much. Because what we have is a unified way of defining the policies. Unified way of defining the policies here. Understand? Yes. Right. So let us see here, guys, how exactly this the policy looks like here and how it works here. Let me just show you here. Just a second. Look at this one. See, I'm using the product called as Cloud Custodian actually. So I have the tool installed on my Linux environment here. The tool installed on my Linux environment here. And look at this one. Yeah. So look at this one here. So this Cloud Custodian is a product which is developed using the Python, guys. So I just created, one second. So I just created a Python VENV, virtual environment called as custodian. So let me just do, like, say, I'll source it. I'll say source. Let me use custodian / bin / activate. Right? So now I'm here. Now, if you see here, I'll just say custodian I installed this tool. I'll just use -H. So it will show you. Look at this one. So this is a cloud custodian, cloud fleet management actually. And I want to see what are all the cloud schemas I installed as a part of this cloud custodian. What are all the cloud schemas? Understand? So I'll just use here. Let us take, I'll use custodian and I'll just say schema. Yeah. Look at this one. These are all the schemas that I use. I have GCP, I have Oracle Cloud infrastructure and GCP, Azure, and by default, custodian comes with the AWS schemas. So this is basically the schema that I have. That means I can define the policies against any of these things, against any of these things actually. So if you look at here, if you look at like say, what are all the kind of, right, I'll just say cloud custodian schema. Let us take an example. I'll use AWS here. I'll just say AWS VPC, AWS dot VPC. This is the schema. I'll say AWS dot VPC if I want to see. So these are all basically the policies that you can write. Auto tag the user, copy related tag, delete empty, invoke lambda, invoke SFN, mark for op, modify, normalize. So like the means these are all the VPC related policies that I can enforce. VPC related policies that I can enforce actually. Able to understand? So I can means if I take only the cloud here, I'll just say AWS. It will be showing me what are all the resources I have. And I want to see the policies specific to, I want to implement the policies specific to the AWS, sorry, VPC. Then I can get into that one. I can get into that one here. I'll say schema AWS.VPC here. So what policies I can write for the VPC? Like this, you can have, this is the basic structure of the cloud custodian actually. Understand? Right. Now, let us see here. Let me take, I'll just show you a simple policy which I wrote here, which I wrote. Understand? One second. See here, I'll just go here. Yeah. So I'll take say CD AWS demo and look at this one. I have custodian dot YML here. Understand? So look at this one. I'll just say cat custodian dot YML. You can give any name here. You can give any name. So what I'm trying to do here is EC2 tag the compliance terminate. That is the name I gave. The resource is EC2. Terminate all the stopped instances marked for a termination by today's date. And see, terminate all stopped instances marked for a termination by today's date. So here I'll say, first thing I'm adding here is aws.autoscaling.group name absent. That means it should not be the part of autoscaling group. And the type marked for op and custodian underscore status and then say get the status and then say terminate it. So the next one is you can even I want to terminate this one if there is no tag called as owner, there is no tag called as cost center, there is no tag called as the project. There is no tag called as a project actually. Understand? So this is the way you can terminate this one. So to execute this one, first you can just do the normal, like say, you can do the dry run of this one and you can check it. Dry run of this one and you can check it. Or you can directly run this one. But if you want to run, you need to have your, okay, let me just use, I'll say AWS configure, I'll just say list. So I have some profile keys and all here, but let us see whether I'm able to find AWS S3 LS. Yeah, so the AWS access key ID you provided does not exist in our records. Okay, so let me do one thing. I'll just say, I'll go to my here quickly. I'll just generate the credentials here. So I'll just go to my, generally we should not do it for root user, but I'm just creating it for our understanding purpose. So I'll just say create it. Let me use this one. I'll just use AWS configure. Right, it will ask me the access key, then secret access key, and let us take US East one. I'll say JSON. Okay, so now if I see AWS S3 LS, fine, it is available here. But anyhow, I can apply this one. You can see here. I'll just say custodian. I'll just say -H. Look at this one. So the report version, validate, and all this stuff that we have. See here, you can see custodian, run, schema, report, logs, metrics, version, validate, and all. So I can just use custodian. I'll just say validate custodian.ym. Yeah, it says that configuration valid custodian.ym. Now, if I want to run this one, I'll say custodian and I'll just say run. And that's okay. I'll just run my, I can even define what can be my output. I'll just say --, output directory -dir is equal to the dot, the current location I want to store the output, and my custodian file is the custodian.yml. I'm just trying to run, but anyhow, I don't have any resources and all, but let us see. Will it execute or not? Yes. So region and custodian here, the policy is applied. The policy is applied. And anyhow, right, if I see here ls, now let me go to tree. I'll see, is there any log that is created here, right? So this is the custodian run.log. I'll just say tail. I'll use the tail. I'll just use, EC2. Understand? Under this, I'll just use custodian run.log. Yeah, that's fine. While calling the describe instances, the AWS operation was not validate the provided access credit. So this is the old log. This is around 1358. So it is not the new log actually. And let me go here. I'll just say, I'll go to CD, AWS demo, ls, I'll go to CD, EC2. But here it has to generate the output. ls-al custodian. Yeah. --, output date. But anyhow, see, that is applied actually. If any errors are there, directly it generates that particular log. It generates the log. So similarly here, guys, this is like if you see cat custodian.yml, if you look at here, see, this is what I call it as a syntax. Name of this policy and the resource. So that's okay. Filters and then actions. This syntax is the same. Only thing is the resource definitions are different. Only the thing is the resource definitions are different. So example, if you see, I'll go to, let us take, say, Azure, right? If here you can say, I have a custodian.yml. Understand? So I'll just say cat custodian.yml here. Look at this one. The name, the resource is azure.resource group. And the filters, the type is empty resource group, action type is delete. So here also you can see you have actions, you have filters, and you have the resource. So this is what we call it as unified way of defining the, means unified way of coding it. The language is the same. Only thing is the schema is different. The resource schema is different. The resource schema is different. So if I go to the custodian, I'll just say schema. And if I say Azure, here, see, let us take, I want to see, let us take, say, Azure, yeah, Azure.resource group. So if I go here, custodian schema, I'll just say Azure.resource group. And what kind of policies you can write here? What kind of policies? You can see the actions can be auto tag the date, auto tag the user, delete, lock, logic app, and all. And these are all the filters that you can write. And when you're using this particular resource, it gives you what actions and what filters. Means the filter is nothing but basically on which you want to apply the policy. And if this is not compliant, what kind of remediation you want to do. That is basically called as the action. So this concept is what means if you learn how to work with this YAML and what is the structure of this YAML, that is good enough. Tomorrow, if a new cloud is coming here, right, the custodian gives me the schema. The custodian gives me the schema here. And I can start using that particular schema here. I can start using it. Understand? So let us take, I'll just use AZ. I'll just use group list. Let us see whether I logged into the Azure or not. Yeah, it is not logged in. Let us take, say, AZ login. Okay. So I'll just use, just say Azure AZ login -- use the device code. I log in here. Right. So let me quickly log in and I'll show you whether it can really apply the policy or not. I'll just log in here. So this is my Azure. I'll just say device login. And this is my device code here. So I don't require to worry about how in Azure they define the policies using Azure policy, how they do the policy implementation in AWS using AWS config. You need not understand different architectures actually. That is the main advantage of this one. Yeah. So now it is logged in here. Yes. Now take an example. I'll go here. I have so many resource groups here. I'll just have one resource group. I'll create one resource group. Let us take, say, PackRG1. PackRG1. I'll just say review and create. And I didn't create any resources under this. In the PackRG1, I didn't create any resources. So I have, I'll just say refresh. I have my PackRG1. Wait, it will come. Yeah, this is my PackRG1. And there is no resource. Now, what exactly is my policy here? That's okay. I'll just select this one. See, what exactly my policy here? I'll say cat custodian.yml. Cat custodian.yml. Understand? So here what I'm doing, RG remove empty. That means removes any empty resource groups from the subscription. I already logged in. So now let me use like say custodian and I'll just say run and I will use -- output -dir is equal to the dot. That is the current directory. And I will use my custodian dot. This is my policy. So let us see. It executes. So it says that it is authenticated using the CLI. Right? So you can see here, the policy RG-remove empty resource group Azure Cloud count 1 custodian delete modified resource group packrg1. It is deleted. Packrg1 is deleted. So this is what do you mean by the policy enforcement actually. That means you can define what kind of action. So you go to this particular resource and see the schema of this, what kind of remediation actions I can perform on this. So now it says that the packrg1 is deleted. So let me go here. It identified that is the only resource group which doesn't have any resources. So earlier I have the packrg1 and I'll say refresh it. So now if you see here, that packrg1 is gone. The packrg1 is gone. And this is basically the way how you work with the unified way of writing the policies actually. Yes, we can even create, right, a pipeline in which you can include this one, a pipeline. Understand? So I can take this particular policy here. I'll just say cat, I'll just say custodian.yml. So let me take this, the policy here. Let us go to, I'll just say, I'll go to CD, my policies. Right, look at this one. I'll just say ls. Now I'll just say nano policy.yml. And let me add this policy here. Let me add the policy. And I'll just say, so now I have my policy here. I have my policy and I can even create my pipeline here. I can create even my pipeline as a part of this one. So let us take ls-al. See, I already initialized it as a Git actually. And let me just go here. What I'll do here is, let me go to, I'll just open my, I'll just say, okay, let me use this one. I'll just say aex dot. So I'm just using Azure DevOps here. Azure DevOps. I can use Jenkins or I can use GitHub Actions. I can use GitLab or anything. So I have, I'll just say next. I'll just show you. I'll just say done. Yeah, just give me a little time, guys, so that I can show you the complete process. So that it's like 8 minutes extended actually. Yeah, just give me a little time. Okay, so here I'll just go and create my repo here, and I'll push my code to this policy as code, the code to this particular repo. Let us take an example. I have, let us take, say, there is a repo here for me. I'll just create here a pack repo. I'll just say pack repo 1, and I'll just say create it. Now, let me take this one. This is my repo actually. So here, see, this is already presently, if you see, I'll just say git remote -v. So it doesn't have any remote, this one. So what I'll do here is, I'll just say git status. Sorry. Git status. So I have policy.yml. I'll just use, I'll say git add dot, and I'll say git commit -m commit 1. Right? So now if you see, I'll just use git log, right? But still it is not pushed to anything. So what I will do is, I'll just say git remote add origin. So I'm adding this repository as the origin, right? So now if I see git remote -v, so it is now. Now I just say git push origin master. I'm going to push this one to there. So it is asking what is the password for this. So here I'll go. Already here I have, so let me go to the git credentials. So this is my password. So I'll just go here. I'll just give it as a password. Yeah, it is pushed. It is pushed. So by this time, if I come here, and say refresh, so I got my policy YML here. Now let me create a pipeline for this. I'll create a pipeline here. So I'll just say create a new pipeline. Yes, I want to create a pipeline for pack repo one. Understand? Right. I'll just use something kind of an empty pipeline. I'll just starter pipeline, something like this. See, this is my YML steps and all. So here I'm going to write my pipeline script. This is my pipeline script. This is my pipeline script. Here you can see what I'm trying to do. So I'm using, okay, I don't require the pool to be used as it is. So this is the pool, I'm using it. So what are all the steps that I have here? Look at this one. Check out the self and use the Python version and then script pip install upgrade pip install C7M, which is nothing but my custodian. So custodian underscore Azure, custodian underscore GCP, and then this will install the custodian and custodian validate the policy.yml and validate the policy file. Or I can say, I can write the script to run the policy custodian commands actually as a part of this pipeline itself. So let me take these steps here. Let me take the steps here. And let me put it as a part of this one. Put it as a part of this one. Okay, I think it's the YAML syntax error. I'll do one thing. I'll just do it in a different way. I'll just take this and okay, just 1 second. Sorry. So what I'll do is VM image is Ubuntu latest. So here I use VM image is Ubuntu latest, right? I'll just use this completely. So, right, this is my complete pipeline. So once I run this pipeline, it automatically provisions this server and it executes my pipeline and it executes my policy actually. It executes the policy, right? And I can say save and run it, or I can just use save it, right? I'll just say save it. So my pipeline is ready here. Now, if you look at here, right, the pipelines here, I should be able to see my pipeline here, which is nothing but pack repo one. So whenever I want, I can execute this pipeline. Whenever I want, I can execute this pipeline. Like this policy, right? I can have multiple policy files also here. And in each step I can call. So the first policy is to apply for the AWS. The second policy is to apply to the Azure. The third policy is apply. So means I'll keep all my policy YAMLs and I'll run as a part of my single pipeline itself. Single pipeline itself. This is the major advantage of working with the policy as code. Working with the policy as code. Right? Able to understand, guys? Yes or no? Great. So finally, so the policy as code emerges as a transformative solution to these multi-cloud complexities. By codifying the security and IT governance policies, PAC enables the adoption of established software development best practices, including version control, automated testing, and continuous deployment and all. So this fundamentally changed how the organization approached the governance, moving from static documentation to the dynamic and executable logic. So this is about like, see how to work with policy as code. I used a tool. Yeah, means I have some examples which are based on the HashiCorp Sentinel. I have some examples which is based on like say CrossGuard from the Pulumi and all. So we implemented because example like say the present client where I'm working, so they are using Pulumi extensively. So for them we use the CrossGuard and they have only means they have the cloud environments which is Azure and an on-prem environment which is OpenStack actually. So we are using like say CrossGuard for that actually. So like this, we have different types of tools which are very specific to their environments. We will be using it. Means more or less all the products will support these things, guys. Understand? Yeah. So Any question? Means like if you have any queries, you can go ahead now.
Yes, Prof. I think we have a few questions. We
Right.
would start with, I think Azure policy also has been demoed. So I hope Sajini's question is answered. Bhaskar had written in between saying that you showed separate YAML file for AWS and GCP, I mean AWS and Azure, but then how do we achieve a single pane of, how do you integrate all the different cloud policies and create a single policy as code for multiple
Yes, that is what
cloud?
I was telling you here. See, when you are writing the policy, understand, see, in my custodian here, right, let us take an example here. If I go to, like, say, CD AWS demo, right, I'll just say cat custodian.yml. See here. Here I'm saying that EC2. That's enough for me. And let us take an example. I will take these policies. The name is this one. Okay. This is an ML file, guys. Name is this one. So let me take this part. Okay. I'll just put it here. 1 second. See here. The policies, the name is this. Okay. Now let me go here. I'll just say Azure and cat the custodian.yml. Now, so here I'll take this name. So here, if you see, this is my another policy here. Only thing is when you are running this one, these are the two policies I wrote. When you are running this one at your custodian level, you need to have these two things available. Azure as well as AWS. Means by default custodian comes with EC2. But only thing is make sure that wherever you are executing, say example in this pipeline, what I have done, I'm just installing here. Okay, right. I was showing you here, right? I was installing here. I'll go to the repos. So here you can see I was installing what? C7N Azure, C7N GCP. So, and by default, the custodian comes with AWS. So when I write a policy.ml, in the same policy.ml, you can use the resources of everything. You can use the resources of everything because we are not running any Azure specific command or AWS specific command. We are running custodian run. We are running the command called as custodian run. Understand? Hope that is clear, right?
Yes, Prof. Because any other questions, anyone? We'll be sharing the recording. I think there are multiple things around that. Okay, these are the questions, Prof, mainly.
Yeah.
Any
Okay.
other questions?
So
Shall we
somebody
wait for
itself
1 or
answered
2
that one.
minutes?
Mahadevan has answered that.
Yeah, yes.
Great.
Okay, so I think
Right.
since the paucity of time, I'll just take back the screen, Prof, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So I know those who are from the GRC and the cloud environment would have enjoyed. Others who are new to this, we have a series of programs which will help you to catch up with these technologies, changes, the disruptions which are happening. A lot of automation, a lot of manual activities are now getting changed. So I'm hoping that this session was useful, at least to give you some glimpse of how not just one cloud, multiple cloud can be managed, security can be managed, policies can be automated, right? So if you want to know more and want to learn know about these, please do look at PRAISE programs. We have a full-fledged master's programs for working professionals. So we would talk about the program which is associated with this webinar. It is called a Masters in Cloud Architecture and Security. We also have a shorter program which is called a Certified DevOps Specialist with Terraform, Kubernetes, and Docker. This is exactly what we would be covering in one of the part we would be covering. So a complete DevOps pipeline and creating multiple use cases using two clouds or maybe even Google Cloud if you are interested. That is the whole full-fledged program. This is a 50 hours program, and you can definitely with 50 hours can become a DevOps specialist because there are projects associated with this and there are very live training with multiple labs has been set, right? So this is one of the program that you can look at. One of our team members have posted the whole website link. Please do look at. And if you have a master's aspirant and if you are a working professional, please do look at Masters in Cloud Architecture and Security. So those who are not coming from cloud but want to move on to operating, architecting, designing, managing multiple clouds, you must look at this program. This is a UGC approved, industry driven career career transformational program, and very well taken by the participants because the ROI in terms of career transition is more than 100%. So what you would learn is the basics of cloud, to at least 2 or 3 tracks of different clouds. So starting with Azure track and AWS track, along with private cloud, because there are a lot of interest the companies are showing moving to private cloud than all the open, the proprietary clouds. So that is the journey that you will take through, and it is also inbuilt and come with about 5 global certifications. So these are all being taught by Professor Rao and other cloud specialists and who have deployed such projects. And this part which you have just discussed, right, DevOps, DevSecOps, and secure SDLC, and the governance part of it. Because if you are not from governance, I'm sure you would have struggling with understanding how policies are made and how policies have to be implemented using cloud. But this program, this is again, how do you use governance, risk compliance, and privacy, and then automate it with the cloud. So this has all been very detailed discussed in this master's program, and also hybrid cloud deployment and migration, which is the need of today. And followed by, you will also get support on developing your own custom project, which you can always put in your portfolio for your career transition. Because when working professionals take up these the programs, the question that they have in mind is, you are doing some other job now, and how do I migrate to cloud related job? It could be cloud architect or cloud experts, cloud DevOps engineer. How do I show my previous experience? So that is why we say this 2 years would be, multiple projects would be implemented along with the one portfolio project, which is an end-to-end project, and we will also help you to publish. So with this, we have seen a amazing transformation. All the details, we are very transparent. We believe in governance. You can see that the kind of transitions that the people are making, it's all available in our website, right? So with this, I know we have taken almost 1.5 hours to the session, and we are hoping that this program, this webinar series are very helpful. And if you want to know more about the master's programs or the DevOps program which we discussed, please do connect with us. We are available Monday to Saturday, so please do visit us. And on Saturday, if you come, you can also meet Professor Rao and other mentors and other participants. So I hope this session was useful, and we would see you in the next webinar. And of course, I must say big thank you to Professor Rao for taking up with a good demo session, because speaking is one thing, but demoing and demonstrating the real power of multi-cloud environment and actually implementing it in such a short span of time. Thank you so much, Professor Rao. Hope everyone has benefited from this. So thank you, everyone, and have a good evening and good night, and hoping to see you in the next webinar very soon, or walk into the campus very soon. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Rao. There were so many questions here. I am looking at it now.
No, not much, madam, actually.
What is that they are telling that there is somebody has written, we would like to collaboratively work with your organization in healthcare, it seems. Means what?
Okay.
Vijay
Could you please
Savdev.
show the demo?